Hello there. Congratulations for reaching halfway through the course. Keep up the pace and enthusiasm. So today we will talk about preparation in our module 3. In this section we will cover how to organize the presentation content. So we have done the planning part, how to design the layout. Now we will put the content in the layout and see how to use, what are the words and phrases that you can use to start your presentation. How do you add the data in the middle of the presentation, and how do you conclude? So the format for designing will include opening, main body, and conclusion. So let's start with opening your presentation. A successful presenter is the one who gains the attention of his audience within the first 30 seconds to 2 minutes, depending on the duration of the presentation. So, opening is the most critical point. The 4 important aspects of opening are attention grabber, audience relevance, speaker's credibility, and bottom line. We'll discuss each one of them in the next coming slides. Here I'd like to share some of the openings of some of the famous speeches, which include the speech given by Swami Vivekananda in a lecture in America, where he started with his famous line, "Sisters and Brothers of America." These unexpected words coming from a hermit from India got the attention of hundreds of Americans in an instant. And it is believed that there was constant applause for quite a few minutes. The second most famous speech that I believe a lot of us would have heard of is Martin Luther King Jr.'s, which he started by saying, "I have a dream." Our very own Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, has his unique way of starting his speeches or presentations with "Bhaiyon or Behno." Just by these 2 words, he gets the attention of 130 crore Indians. So this is the power of the opening of your presentation. The first 2 minutes of your presentation, or 30 seconds, depending on what is the duration of your presentation, goes a long way in deciding how much attention can you get instantly. So let's start with the first component, that is attention grabber. Attention grabber, yes, like the name rightly suggests, is where you say something right at the beginning of a presentation that gets the attention of the audience. So you can do this by either sharing some data or information which is new, which they've not heard of, or which can be quite shocking. For instance, I like to start a lot of my public speaking or presentation skills workshops by sharing with people a survey report which said that people are more scared of public speaking than of death. A comedian once said, so this means they're more comfortable in a coffin than that they are on a stage. Now, this is an information which is factually correct based on a research, but an information which a lot of people may not have, and even if they do, it's something, an additional information, something that shocks them and brings them to your, oh, is that so? So let's listen. What is presentation all about? The other one is to tell a story. You can start your presentation with a story. It doesn't have to be a story where you are going to talk about in detail about some mythical characters. You can take an incident or an anecdote from your work, from your organization, from your experience, what you've seen around, and that can work as a story. But it should have a message. There should be a reason why you chose that incident to correlate with this topic. Ask a question. You can start your presentation by asking a question. So if you remember in module 1, I asked you define a powerful presentation. Well, this is an online module of self-learning, so I couldn't take your answers, but I did give you some time to think about it and then showed you the answer. So asking a question grabs the attention of the audience immediately because now they're engaged in a conversation directly with you. Recite a quote. I started my presentation in module 1 with one of my favorite quotes from Zig Ziglar about why is presentation skills important for every person in the world. So you can start with any quote but it should correlate with the message, core message of the presentation. Relate to past knowledge. You can start with asking some questions, sharing some information which commonly is known to everybody. So what you do is you get everyone's attention and correlate their existing information with the new information that you're going to provide. So the bottom line of an attention grabber is that get an audience respond to you within the first 2 minutes. You need to get a response from them within the first 2 minutes of you having started to talk to them. You can use any one of these 5 components for that. The next element is audience relevance. Why should we listen to you? This is where your why comes into picture, right? You need to, if you've done your planning well, you will be ready with your answer when you come to the preparation part of your presentation. The purpose of your presentation has to be extremely, extremely clear. At the very start, I told you you will learn how to present with impact, because I know people attending this presentation, what you're here for? Based on my interaction with the organization, it's the people who are interested in improving their presentation skills, connecting with the audience better. So the why is present with impact. How can you learn to present better? Now comes a very important element called speaker's credibility. It's always important if the audience it's always important that the audience know what gives you the authority to stand there and talk to them about that topic. Well, if you are a new speaker like me, so I gave my introduction in the beginning. I spoke about my experience, my qualifications, the domain expertise that I have. Well, it's not always important to present it the way I did if the audience already knows you. In case you're presenting to your own team, to your own family, to your own manager, you can skip the general introduction like name, department, etc. But do mention why have you been chosen to speak on the topic, or why have you chosen to speak on the topic? What qualifies you for it? It can be some past experience, something you have been trained on, right? Something you've learned yourself. It's anything that you share in the beginning that shows that you have the authority to speak on this topic, right? Things that you talk about in credibility. Now we talk about the bottom line. The bottom line is our favorite hook that we discussed in the planning section. So I hope that all of you have gone through the previous module in detail, so you are aware of the hook. For anyone who's not aware of what is the hook, I'll request you to go through the presentation on module 2. Hook has been explained in detail, and here I will be sharing some examples of what kind of hooks can you use in your presentation. For example, power to present, best out of waste, to collect the most creative ideas, to create a culture of innovation, to do more with less, reduce the turnaround time TAT by 10%. So your hook is that one phrase, catchphrase, that highlights the most important benefit of this particular presentation or this conversation that you're having with your audience. So if you have done all of this, you've reached the main body of your presentation. Now, it's very important that before you start the main body, you give people an outline of the basic structure. For example, when I started this presentation, I told you that this entire presentation will be divided into 3 sections of plan, prepare, and present. So you had a basic structure of the main body clear in front of you. I did tell you that we will have a review section and we will have a webinar. So that makes the audience very clear as in how much information they're going to receive. At what stage are they going to receive a particular information which they as an individual might be interested in. So in this presentation, each module is designed separately so the transition is easy. So for your module should be designed separately within your components or your what's in it for me elements of your entire body should be designed with a separate transition from point 1 to point B. Right, so for example, once I'm talking about prepare and the prepare is completed and I'm moving on to presentation, so I have to make it very clear that all of you are aware that, okay, now we have had this entire module on preparation and I hope you've done the exercises and it's clear. And now moving on to the third part of our training, which is presentation. You can do this in your business presentations as well. So this is what plant A has been presenting. This is the status of this particular machine in plant A. Now, I will share with you the status of the same machine in plant B for us to identify. So what you do is you tell them you move from point 1 to point 2. You can also use body language very effectively for transitions, and we will discuss about that in module 5. But for now, you need to understand that each section of your speech should clearly mention the closing of each point, opening and closing of each point. For example, I just gave you one. Moving to point number 2, prepare. Having discussed planning in detail, let's talk about the second P, prepare. Right, so this is what you do is you tell them point 1 is finished and we are moving on to point 2. And as you can see on the screen, that each one of these points, which were just mentioned as phrases initially, will now have the supporting detail and content. So this is the stage where you add the data. You decide which data you keep, which you remove, and the data you keep, how do you present it? What goes first, what goes second? Whether you are going to use a PowerPoint or you're going to use a handout. Whether you will use a map or you will just give a verbal presentation. So you can create your notes with certain points in that. So this is the stage where your main body gets the information which you will be sharing with your audience. So pointers for the main body to remember is inform the audience about the main points that you will cover during the presentation. For instance, for this presentation, plan, prepare, and present were the 3 Ps. Organize the data and content for each of the points. Plan a smooth transition for each point. And inform the audience about the shift to the new point. What happens is when your audience is listening to you, they're totally focused on that particular point that you're explaining. And when you're moving to the next point, it's your job as the captain of the ship to take them with you. So you explain that, okay, this part is done, we're moving to the next one. So the entire attention moves to the next part. So now we come to the last section of your preparation, which is conclusion. So most of this you've already designed in your planning phase. If you've planned well, all you need to do now is to put it all together. Now the first thing about conclusion is signal the end. Next, reinforce your central idea, call for action, and use a clincher. And that's my favorite. I'll just explain in detail what each one of these 4 mean. Signal the end. So when you've been presenting, whether you've been presenting for 5 minutes, for 20 minutes, for 5 hours, whatever duration you've been talking, always tell the people that you're about to end. Like you told them that you're moving from point A to point B, this is now when you're starting a presentation, you need to tell them that now you are ending the presentation. You can use phrases like, in the end, last point before I close. Before I close, let's review the main points. We can conclude. Then comes reinforcing your central idea, reviewing what you have done so far. For example, for this presentation, remember the 3 Ps, plan, prepare, present. So many times I've repeated these 3 Ps throughout this workshop. It will absolutely ingrain in your mind. And every time you think about this training, you will think of plan, prepare, and present. And the moment you will think about the word plan, all the components that we'll discuss will come to your mind. All the components we'll discuss will come to your mind the moment you think of the word prepare. Now, this is how you help your audience recall the information, by repeating the information, by structuring it into some major 3 benefits, by further explaining it in detail. So what you need to do here is tell them what you told them. And this is what I will do in Module 6. Module 6 is actually a review summary of all the 5 modules that we would have done till then. And now comes the most important part of your presentation, call to action. So you have told your audience the topic of the presentation, the information required, you shared everything with them. Now comes the stage where they will have to take an action. You have to now tell them exactly what is it that you want them to do. So based on this information, I will want you, request you to consider this idea. I need you to approve to take it forward. Please donate for this cause. Give your name to volunteer for this activity. Whatever it is you want them to do. For instance, convincing your family to buy the new car. You want them to approve to buy the new car. You want them to at least approve that the old one needs to go. So whatever actions you have in mind, you have to say that in as many words that after explaining, so this is the reason why I want you all to agree that we buy this new particular model because the old one needs to go and this is the best option we have in the next. So this is how you tell them exactly what you want them to do. Don't assume it's understood what you want them to do. Every individual will have a different interpretation of what to do with the information you've shared. So be very clear on why are you talking to them, what do you want them to do. So now comes the last part of preparation, the clincher. The clincher, as the name suggests, is something that grabs the attention of the audience instantly. So it's also called a closer because it gives you an opportunity to connect with your audience and brings your entire information full circle. So you can use as an anecdote, an example which you started your presentation with and refer back to that at the end of your presentation. And then talk, for example, if you're talking about increasing the safety awareness in your plant, you can talk about, like we discussed in the beginning, this particular accident that happened, which was extremely fatal. We need to remember that these things should not happen. We as an organization have to bring our safety to a level where we have no such accidents in the future. So what you do is you connect the entire memory of what you discussed in the beginning and close the entire circle. If you don't do this, the circle is empty and some of the information can filter out. So you reinforce the message. This binds your entire presentation closely in the mind of your audience. You can also use a rhetorical question. A rhetorical question is a question which you ask to your audience, but you don't ask them to answer it. You answer it for them. For example, you may ask, what is a rhetorical question? Well, a rhetorical question is a question where the person who has asked the question gives the answer to. Now what I did was, when I say you may ask what is a rhetorical question, I did not ask any one of you to answer. Of course I couldn't because of the platform we are on, but even if we were face to face, I wouldn't have asked you to answer this question. I just asked this question, paused for a few seconds, and then gave the answer. So this is called a rhetorical question. This makes sure that you ask a question. So what is your key takeaway? I hope you all understand the importance of this particular safety training. Now, what you're doing is you're making sure everybody gets the same takeaway, not separate takeaways. Or use a new quotation or refer back to the opening quotation. So like I use the quotation from Zig Ziglar, I can end my presentation in the last one using the same quotation that, like the famous motivational speaker said in the beginning, what I shared with you, all of us, if we are in the business of interacting with people, are salespeople, we all need presentation skills. So the secret out here is very simple, that you are trying to remind them of the main message. You're giving them, the science is that people remember stories faster. So if you give them story, they remember it faster. You ask a question, they will remember it better because they will remember your question. And every time they think of that, the entire information comes back to their mind. So clincher, therefore, is the way to increase the recall power of your message in the minds of your audience. If you remember, this is the second in one of the two core competencies we're trying to develop in the course of this module. First was to become a presenter par excellence, and second is to know the techniques so that your audience can recall your message easily. And clincher, call for action, hook, attention grabber, these are all the techniques which, if you include in your presentation, will make recalling in the mind of your audience much easier and much better and much faster, in fact. So this brings us to exercise number 5 of the module number 3. And here what you need to do is watch this video on the designing, opening and closing of a presentation. The link is, as always, given in your exercises sheet. Watch this video and Make a list of all the ideas that you get from this video and use these ideas to prepare for your final submission presentation. So I hope you've been doing these exercises alongside. So if your plan should be ready by now, and now is the time to add information in that plan and use these ideas to create that plan. So you should have a very clear call for action for your audience in that 2-minute presentation. I'll be specifically looking for that. And ensure that the content you prepare can be delivered within 2 minutes. There's a lot that can be said on every topic, but you should be very sure that what you are presenting can be completed within the timeline.